What's up guys, it's Kristen here today with my December wrap-up. December was a pretty good reading month. I read a total of 6 books, and the 7th book though, I did have to DNF, which totally kills me, but I will talk about that at the end of the video. So the first book that I read this month was my book club's pick, and it was called Halfway to the Grave by Jeanine Frost. It is about a girl named Kat who is a vampire slayer, but she is also half vampire herself, and then she teams up with another sexy vampire guy so they can hunt even more evil vampires. Yeah, basically my book club, we just wanted a really cheesy popcorn type read this month, and we had a really good laugh about it at the meeting. I can appreciate it because it just kind of is what it is, but obviously it's not my preferred genre, so in the end I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Next, I read Perfume, the Story of a Murderer by Patrick Suskind, which is the story of a young man named Grimm in 18th century Paris who is born with an extraordinary sense of smell. But when one day he catches the scent of a beautiful young girl, he murders her in a panic, but then it becomes his mission to figure out a way to bottle her scent so that he can have it with him always. So obviously this is a very dark and disturbing book. It probably has 2 of the strangest scenes I have ever read in any book ever. I had such a hard time with this book though. I love the premise of it. I don't mind dark and creepy, that's kind of my thing, but I almost DNF'd this book about 10 times because I was so bored reading it. Mostly because I am not in love with Patrick Suskind's writing style. I found it very dense, there was almost 0 dialogue, and I didn't have any sympathy whatsoever for the main character of Grimm, so I felt like I didn't care what happened to him in the end. I ended up giving it 2 out of 5 stars. I am still very conflicted about my feelings over this book because it was very memorable. But again, I didn't love the whole time reading it. And so if you want to see my full review and also my thoughts on the film adaptation of the same name, I will link that down below. Next, I read this collection of Brothers Grimm fairy tales compiled by Phillip Pullman. There are 50 of the Brothers Grimm stories in this edition, and I just had so much fun reading them. They are strange and bizarre, hilarious, and I find it completely fascinating that they have lasted for so many hundreds of years, and also that they were meant to be children's stories. Also, I didn't know for the longest time that the 2 brothers, Wilhelm and Jacob Grimm, didn't actually write these stories, that they just went around and collected German folklore, edited it, and compiled them all in one edition. So I loved in here how Philip Pullman notes after every story what the brothers' source material was, and also how they changed the story with each new edition. Like, I thought it was funny how in a lot of their first editions in the story it was a mother and then they changed it to a stepmother. And again, I have a full review of this, and so I will link that down below. Next, I picked up The Golden Compass, or it's also called Northern Lights in some parts of the world. I never understand why they changed titles, but anyways, it is the first book in Philip Pullman's his Dark Materials trilogy. This book is so interesting because it is set in a parallel universe of our world. The main character, Lyra, lives at Oxford University and she visits London, but then there are also armored polar bears in the story. And in their world, their soul resides in what they call demons, which can be any kind of animal creature that stays with them all their lives and can never be more than a few feet away, and they have such a strong connection that they can never be parted from them. The mystery in this story is that a bunch of children start to go missing, and then Lyra receives as a gift something called an alethiometer, or a golden compass, because it kind of looks like a compass. And she can ask it questions and it'll turn on the different symbols, and somehow she figures out a way to interpret them. So she gets picked to go on a quest to help find these missing children and utilize her golden compass to locate them. I loved this book. I thought it was such a great mystery. I honestly did not know what was going on till very close to the end, and even then I'm not exactly sure of what all the meanings were. I know it's supposed to be almost a children's book slash YA, but reading it I did not feel like that. I felt like it was very sophisticated. I thought it had very mature themes and writing style, and I am so excited to pick up the next book in this trilogy called The Subtle Knife. So in the end, I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. For my nonfiction read of the month, I read the book Stiff, The Curious Case of Cadaver Bodies by Mary Roach. This book is exactly as the title suggests, a book about dead bodies. I had no idea that cadavers could have so many different uses. I think we all just assume medical students dissecting them for anatomy classes, but that is just part of it. They are also used for criminal investigations so that they can study the decomposition rate of cadavers. And they've even been used instead of crash test dummies in order to test out automobile safety regulations. Mary Roach also goes into the history of cadavers. Most of the time they were not given willingly, they were dug up from graves, or they used the bodies of executed convicts. I love Mary Roach's writing style. She is hilarious even on topics like this where you assume that no one would joke around. And not to get all morbid, but after reading this, I would definitely donate my body to science. So you could say this book had a profound impact on my life slash death. Though I will warn you, if you tend to have a weak stomach or you are easily squeamish, I don't think this book is for you. Especially the chapter called Eat Me. Just don't go there. There are some things that you cannot unread. But I loved it. I found it fascinating. I gave it 4 to 5 stars. I did read it a little bit slower than I normally would have, and I've heard great things about her audiobooks. So if you do want to read it, I would recommend checking the audiobook version out. Lastly, I read The Bad Beginning, the first book in Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. This is a very famous children's book series about the 3 Baudelaire children who are left orphaned and then stuck with the evil Count Olaf, who is trying to get all of their inheritance money from them. I absolutely loved reading this. It is so dark and creepy, unlike most children's stories, but also very funny, and I love that the writing is so sophisticated in this, and it doesn't talk down to children or pretend like they couldn't understand something or something might be too scary for them. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, and I'm very excited to start the next book, The Reptile Room, in January. So now let's talk about the one book that I DNF'd this month, which it is very rare for me to not finish a book because it drives me insane, and I always feel like you can at least get something out of a book, and that's why I always keep reading on. But I got halfway through Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, and I finally gave up and said I can't do this anymore. I thought this book was tailor-made for me. I read a lot of classics. I don't mind dark subject matter, as you've seen from the previous books. I love unreliable, unlikable narrators, and I've just heard endlessly how beautiful the prose is. But obviously this is not the book for me. I felt like I didn't have an ounce of enjoyment while I was reading it. I felt so uncomfortable reading the subject matter, but I was also very bored by the story, and I had no interest in seeing how it was gonna end. And this is of course so strange because Lolita is such a well-loved classic. I have heard nothing but praise for this book, and so I'm just really confused about what I'm missing. So if you have read Lolita, I would love for you to comment below. Tell me, I guess, whether you liked it or not, but if you did like it, please, I would love to know why, and maybe then I could see a different side of the book. So that is it for all of the books that I read in the month of December. Please leave your comments below if you've read any of these books, especially Lolita. I am very excited to hear your thoughts on it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!